In this tutorial, I am going to show you how you can effectively work with logic. What does logic mean? So there's different ways of actually using logic. Usually it's either to shorten or to customize the survey for the participant. Let's have a really quick look at how you can set up logic. I have a survey prepared, and we will be working with this survey. So basically, it is an example of a mobility survey where we would like to find out how our employees are getting to the office, which means of transport are they using, how much money are they spending, and would they like to have a parking space at the office as well for one of the days. So let's start with actually setting up our first logic. And the first logic, and I've got this written up here as well, is I would like to base it on this question. Where do you work from? Do you work from home, from the office, or both? So sometimes from home and sometimes you're in the office and you're working from the office. If an employee is working from home, of course, it doesn't really make sense for them to fill in this survey. So we would like for them to actually jump to the end of the survey. And the jump logic can be found on page level. So as you can see, the logic symbol, which is this little symbol over here, can be found on a page level and on question level. In this case, we would like to use page, and then I go to add logic, jump to page, and then I choose my page, and I would like them to jump to the end of the survey. And now we're entering when this is actually supposed to happen. So when the answer on, where do you work from, equals from home. So here in this dropdown, we can actually choose equals, less than, greater than, is different from, and in this case, we want them to jump to the end of the survey if the answer, where do you work from, is from home. If they say from the office or both, then they should go on to page number 2 and actually to complete this survey. Once I'm finished with my setup, I can go to Save Changes. And as you can see now, the logic symbol up here is green. And also here in the dropdown where it says display all pages, you can see that page number 1 has a green logic symbol, which means there's logic applied on page number 1. Now, before we look at different ways of actually working with logic, I would like to share some tips and tricks with you that you should pay attention to when you're working with logic. And the first one is you should always create an overview in a separate document or a separate piece of paper if you would like to work with logic. We don't have a logic tree in Netigate that you can actually navigate with, so it makes most sense to actually create yourself an overview so you don't get too confused, especially when it's a bit more complex. The second point is to finalize the questionnaire before you set the logic, because later on it might not be possible to move around questions, to add pages, to move around pages, because logic is a bit delicate. So what you should do is, as we did here, finalize the setup of your survey and then add logic. Logic usually only works in relation to another page, and that means usually to a previous page. I cannot base logic on a page that is yet to come, and I cannot apply logic within one page, meaning that if you would like to have a question, like a follow-up question displayed after a question has been answered, let's say you have an NPS question, and when there is a low score, you would like to ask a follow-up question, that question can then not be on the same page. It needs to be on the next page, and that's the page that you would apply your logic to. And logic cannot be applied to text answers, so only actually if you have an ordinal answer or a metric scale, that's something that you can base logic on. This also applies to background data, so if you've got a background data that is text, you cannot apply logic to it. Questions which logic is based on should be required. That's just a little tip from my side, because if you're basing a question or if you're basing a logic on this question, for example, and if it's not required and the person doesn't answer it and clicks further, the logic won't really work. So in this case, if you're basing a logic on a question, make sure that it's required. and if something's not working, which can happen, especially if it's a bit more complex or maybe there's even a bug. If something's not working, please make sure to contact our customer support. I would like to ask you to give the survey ID, which you can find either here by hovering this little hashtag, or up here in the URL. It says survey equals, and then there's this number. That is the survey ID. So please provide this to the customer support, and please explain exactly what the logic is supposed to do and what it is not doing at the moment. So now that you have a bit more of an overview, let's go to a different survey. It's the same survey, but I already applied all the logic in there, and I will be showing you how I applied it and how you can do the same. So when you start creating your own survey with your own logic, you might find that you're not seeing the logic or the logic options that I'm showing you today. If you don't see them, the first thing you should check is whether you're on the correct level, whether you're on the question level or on the page level. If you don't find a logic on the question level, for example, just have a look at the page level. If you don't find it there either, it's probably because it's not included in your Netigate license. If you actually need this logic, just contact your account executive and they'll be happy to provide an offer for that. So the first logic we already applied, which is the jump logic, and let's have a look at page number 3. So on page number 2, we are actually asking which means of transport do you mainly use to get to work? Multiple answers are possible. This is a checkbox question. On page number 3, we are asking, for example, the question, do you have a public transport season ticket? If the person has selected public transport up here, they're supposed to see this question. If they have not selected public transport, this question is supposed to be hidden. How do we do that? We apply a logic on question level, which is the hide logic. So I'm applying hide the entire question. When the answer on, then I'm selecting the question on page number 2. And then earlier we used equals. Now we want to use is different from public transport. So if anything else but public transport has been selected, then this question should be hidden. If public transport only or public transport and one of the other options have been selected, then this question will be shown. Let's have a look on page level. So we've got 2 questions here. We've got a question about public transport, and then we've got a question about the gas money. How much gas money do you spend on average per month in euros? Gas money is probably supposed to be asked when the person is coming by car or by motorcycle or scooter. And then, of course, we've got the public transport ticket. But what if the person that's responding to the survey is walking and or taking the bike? Then, of course, they do not have an answer to either of those questions. Now, if we hide both of those questions, the participant would see an empty page, which is also not very nice. So what we have to do is we need to hide this page if the participant of the survey is neither coming by car or motorcycle nor coming by public transport. And we do that by applying a logic on the page. And now it is getting a bit more complex. So we would like to hide the entire page when the answer on question number 2, which is which means of transport do you mainly use, is different from car and different from public transport and different from motorcycle and scooter. I quite often see people using or in this case, or they're using equals. If you base a logic on a checkbox question, it's always best to use different from and in that combination. If you use equals or, it won't work because you would like to exclude the other answers. Let's move on to the next page, which in my opinion is a pretty cool way of showing how logic works. So we've got page number 4, which is about parking spaces. And a person who's been working with the company for more than a year and is either coming to work by car, or electric car or motorcycle, they can reserve one parking spot per week. So we need to base our logic on different aspects. First of all, we need to make sure that the person has been working for us for more than 1 year. This is not a question in the beginning, but rather a background data. I wanted to show you that you can use ordinal background data the exact same way when it comes to logic as you would with a regular question. So we're saying the person has to be working here for more than a year. And of course, they need to have ticked either car, electric car, or motorcycle somewhere on page number 2, because if you're walking, you don't need a parking spot. Then it also says there are 10 parking spaces available. When the 10 are reached for one of the days, the answer option will automatically be disabled. Now let's start with the first logic, which is hiding this page if the person has either been working for us for less than a year or is not coming to work by car or motorcycle. And the logic looks like this. So we have the hide the whole page logic, and we're saying when the answer on. And then we're basing this on the company affiliation. So how long have you been working for this company? And then we say it's different from more than 1 year. So we're hiding the page if the person has not been working with the company for more than a year, which means less than 1 year. So that's the first part of the logic. And then what I did is I added a group, which you can see here. Yeah, so you can add different groups. And the second group is something that you've already seen before, and that is the means of transport. So we want to exclude everybody who's not coming by car or electric car or motorcycle and scooter. And this is exactly the same setup as we had it before. So we're using is different from and because it's a checkbox question. And then we need to connect those two because both cases need to be the case. So you need to have this answer and that answer. And then we need to make sure to actually connect those two groups. And we're connecting those two groups with or. So I can't just simply add a new logic. I actually need to connect those two groups because the person might choose to come by car, but they haven't been working with us for more than 1 year. So either this needs to have happened or this needs to have happened in order for the question to be hidden. So we figured that out, and now we're moving on to this little date picker, where we're asking for which day do you want to reserve a parking space? And we've got the days of the week here. And this is actually the first time that we're not using the answer on mechanism, which we've used before. We're actually using the count on mechanism. And we've been using hide before. This case, we're using disable. I will show you in a moment what disable looks like for the respondent. So we want to disable, and then we don't want to disable the entire question. We actually want to disable the answer option Monday when, and then we've got the count on the question for which day do you want to reserve a parking space when the value Monday equals 10. And once you've set this up, you do the exact same thing with Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday in our case. And what does this look like in the preview? So as you might have seen earlier, there's already some answers on there because I wanted to show you what disable actually means in this case. Let's have a look at the preview. That's what it looks like. If we had chosen hide Tuesday, the answer option would simply not be available anymore. So you wouldn't even see it like this. I chose the disable functionality to show the participant that Tuesday used to be there, but the places have already filled up, so Tuesday is not available anymore in this case. What you choose is entirely up to you. I just wanted to show you the different ways of working. The next type of logic I would like to show you is on the same page, and it is the question, do you want to have more information about the parking provider? there's yes and no as an answer options. So maybe I'm reserving a parking space and I would like to have some more info on that as well. Of course, I could just put in a link somewhere here. If you would like to have some more information about the parking provider, please click here. But this way, the person can get directly redirected to the website of the parking provider. I've seen this used as well with, for example, customer surveys. Would you like some more information about our new product? If the person says yes, they're directly redirected to the website of the product. And the logic is called, where do we have it? Jump to URL. So if you're using jump to URL, you can type in the URL over here, and then you have your when again. So when the answer on do you want more information equals yes, person's directly redirected. If not, they will continue with the survey. And then there's one last logic functionality that I would like to show you, and that is a bit out of context from the survey that I've shown you earlier, but it's the notify logic. And there's two ways of using the notify logic. The first way of using a notify logic, which you can always find on page level, is to notify a certain email address. You can also add logic and add more email addresses to be notified. And that email address will then always be notified if the respondent finished that specific page. So if you're using a notify logic on your second page and the respondent clicks on next page after the second page, the email address that you entered there will be notified. So usually what you do is you put the notify logic on the last page, because the notify logic will always give a summary of all the answers that were given by that specific respondent via email. So you will get a quick summary of everything. And I've chosen to notify always. You can also, again, go with answer on. Let's, for example, say you have a satisfaction question, or you have an NPS, and you only want to notify if you received a negative score, so you can kind of follow up on this. That's also something where you can use the notify logic. Another way of using the notify logic is that you use a text field or text box. It doesn't need to say email over here. You can type in any question you want, but it's very important that email address is checked here in the settings, and you should, in the best case, also have this required. And if you have those settings, then when you click on logic and you add a logic, when you say notify, this email box, so it's page 5, question 1, can be selected. So in this case, you can ask the participant, would you like to have a summary of your answers after you finish the survey? If the person says yes, they can type in their email address, and then you can automatically send them a summary of their questions with this notify logic. Now, how do you test logic? If you would like to test logic, it's pretty important that you always use the preview up here, because it's not possible to test the logic if you're on the page preview up here. So you always need to make sure to click through the survey from start to finish. So the first thing you can do is you can click disregard required questions. If you have a really long survey of like 60 pages or something, and you've only based logic on 3 of those pages or 3 questions, you won't have to answer all the questions, but you can just click through the survey until you arrived at the question where you would like to check the logic. If you're using background data, then you should choose display background data, because at the moment I cannot check whether my survey is actually working, because the question whether the respondent has been working with us for more than a year or not is background data. And as you can see here on page number 1, I cannot see this background data question. So I need to select display background data, and then my company affiliation has been shown. If I say less than a year, and I say I'm coming by car, then I will be directed straight to page number 5. If I'm saying that I've been working here for more than a year and I'm coming by car, then I get the question about the parking spaces. If I've been working there for more than a year, but I'm coming by bike or I'm walking, I will also directly be directed to page number 5. Let's open this in a new window so you can see it a little better. If I'm working from the office, been working here for more than a year, I'm coming by electric car, for example, and then I've got my question about the parking spaces, and I would like to have more information about the car park provider, then we are redirected to the website of the car park provider, in our case, the Netigate website. So that's everything you need to know if you would like to work with logic. Make sure to first set up your survey and then apply the logic, and should something really not work, just contact our customer support. Good luck!